pada ni sa sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa ga ma pa dha ga ma ga ga ma ni dha pa dha ga ma ga ga ma ni सुनाब सखी रे बिरह सताबे पिया बिना कछु नहीं भावे निशी अंधियारी कारी बिजुरी चमक मोरा जिया घबराए सुनब कूक सुनब कूक सुनब. The birds are all flying over there, chirping. Namaskar. I am Sujata BANERJEE. Welcome to Munch UK. Munch means a stage, and this is my munch today. So from the virtual Munch to my real Munch. Munch UK is the lockdown baby of Meera. It's a lockdown baby of Meera Kaushik, brilliant creation, and which has now been very well looked after by the midwives or the nurses like Ambika, Shivalakshmi, Vidya and Suhani. And do you know who we are, all these artists? We are like the neighbors, like the distant relatives. They're all coming from different places. Do you know when, long time back, many centuries back, somebody was born and people came with gifts in Bethlehem? It's similar. So we all artists are back here telling baby the stories. So today I'm going to tell you my stories. Lots of fun stories. I'm going to go inside because outside a bit noisy, though it's beautiful, but a bit noisy. So, my story. There are lots of stories. It has been quite a journey. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. I know people from different parts of the world are all tuned in and they are watching, and I really sincerely thank you all for making this time to come and listen to my stories. I grew up in a small town called Bannerjee, which is like a suburban town. It's about 20 kilometers north of Calcutta, and it's an army and a police and air force base. That's why it's called Bannerjee. There were beautiful green grounds, fields and trees to climb, and which I did. Climbing trees, jumping from the top of the tree, from one tree to another tree, and great fun. But because I was not supposed to do all these things, so I used to be in trouble all the time. But it was a beautiful setup, very safe, because it was, my father was in police service and we grew up in this police compound called Ladbagan. Beautiful, it's like the place is like a garden by the Ganges. So very safe, so I used to play around, jump around. And one thing I did from very childhood, gathered everybody and said, let's do Ravindra Jayanti, let's do Mahalaya, let's do Saraswati Puja, any event, we would just gather everybody together and we have a performance. So nobody was allowed to say, no, I won't or I can't, because we will teach them. I will make sure everybody takes part in everything. So I started first my dance lesson with a very wonderful person called Kanai Chatterjee, and I learned Kathak and folk dance. And that master used to come to our house. There were schools at that time, but not as popular. So master used to come to my house. I'll tell you one funny story. The master used to be a teacher in a local kindergarten school, and it was a very awkward journey to come from that school to my house. It's walkable, but at the same time, when it's really hot summer, it's difficult to walk. So my mother one day said, it's really sunny and hot today, so why don't you just go and take your bike, because I was always on the bicycle. So take the bike and bring him. So I went, and he was sitting at the back. In India, you know, with bicycles, you could put somebody in the front and somebody at the back, and I loved it. And he was sitting at the back, and on the way back, there was like a little hump bridge. So you come up, so I really pedaled and came up, and then when you go down really fast. And we used to have a lot of fun, like letting the hands go and so on. So the master knew when I came on top of that hump bridge, and I let go. And he is holding onto the seat like to save his life, and then screaming and saying, can you stop it? I'll tell your mother, I'll tell your father. I didn't care. I'm just going down fast and letting my hands go, and then the master Ji at the back. So when I came back home, obviously, you can imagine I was in big trouble. But the same master Ji, I forgot to take my ribbons. I used to do, it's interesting, Chitra said she did snake chummers dance, and I did as well. I don't know at that time whether everybody was a snake chummer and so on, I don't know. So that dance was actually quite popular. So one performance, I was supposed to do this snake chummers dance, and I forgot my ribbon, and my mother was not well, so she didn't come. And somebody brought me, and he had all these things like, you know, what I did to him, and maybe many more stories like that. So he picked up a rope, literally a rope, like a jute rope, and he tied my hair really hard, and like, I just made a little squeaking sound. Chop! When you do all these naughty things, you don't remember all these things, that you have to bring all your stuff in the performance and so on. So anyway, I kept quiet. I thought, this is his turn today. So I grew up with all these things, like surrounded by music, and then my mother was a singer. My mother also played the guitar, and it's not the cool guitar, it's like the Hawaiian guitar she used to play. So in my house, there was master used to come, another teacher, my brother and me, we used to do the singing, learn to sing. So growing up, the whole culture around, my mother was very active in the police Mahila Shamiti, that means ladies sort of organization. They used to do lots of social work and so on. So we had quite a vibrant, rich kind of life. And then I finished school, I came to college, and I started learning with another teacher, Srimati Ruby Bandyopadhyay. Very different setup. They were students who were Ruby students. They were all top IES, IPS officer students, children, and they were in the city of Calcutta, and they were a little different. I came from this small town, but I thought only way I could make a mark is like if I do a lot of riyas, and suddenly everybody will start looking at me. And I did. And the person who was instrumental behind this, and instrumental in making me probably whatever little artist I am today, is the Kumar Bose, Pandit Kumar Bose, the famous Pandit Kumar Bose, and his family. There are 3 brothers, and luckily my mother and his mother were childhood friends. So when I started dancing, they were saying, why don't you come here for practice? So I used to go to their house. But I used to go to practice and I wouldn't just leave their house. All the time they're talking about music and dance, and when somebody played a tabla, did you hear the sound? Dhin, did you sound like dhene dhene? So they will, all these discussions, and I started understanding, like when I used to go to concerts, I used to be in so much trouble with my mother because I used to go to their house and not come back. My mother used to be very upset, not because I didn't come back for any other, like for dance practice and so on, but because they were all boys. How come you were hanging around with the boys there? You know, going for 1 hour practice, 2 hour practice, you should be back. But I could not explain that the people who used to come there talk about music, talk about dance, talk about, you know, different artists, different artistic qualities, and I used to love being there. I didn't know that I'll be an artist at that time. So they played a huge part in my growing up at that time when I was in college. And at that time, I also did Bharatanatyam for 2 years. And I was actually enjoying it a lot. That's when I got this nose stud and I had long hair. And I used to think I am like South Indian. I used to wear bindi and this. And I used to think in Calcutta, everybody is called, all people from South are called Madrasis. And I used to quite like it, the whole look of it. And then I gave up Bharatanatyam after a couple of years, because I thought, no, I just like the freedom I could have in Kathak. Anyway, that's another discussion. And I also did a little bit of Odissi, because in Calcutta at that time, like there were more Odissi dancers probably in Calcutta in sort of early 70s and so on, then actually in Orissa. It suited the Bengali bodies very much, the Odissi dance, and it's the next state. So after that, I got married. Everything changed. I got married because my mother was very anxious that because the way I used to, you know, talk to anybody or, you know, not fearless, that nobody will marry me. She was very anxious. Little she would have known at that time that the point is not that whether they will marry me. The point is if I will have them. So anyway, so I come to England. When I came to the airport, after I got married, pretty straightway, pretty much, that I conceived, I was pregnant. So when I came to the airport, and my father came, so, you know, the police people in the airport like, oh, sorry, you are here, oh, you grown up and you are going and all that. So I don't know what they did. I was upgraded. I was in first class. British Airways is to be called BOAC, leaving from Kolkata at night. And I had no idea like what's the difference between a international flight economy and first class, but I was very comfortable. My father comes on the aircraft, gives me my vanity case. You know, it's very funny. We used to have this vanity case with all the makeup things in it, VIP vanity case. I had a blue one. So I was handed over that, and the air hostess comes and put it on the top. And I arrived in London and very excited. And I had to pick up my own bag, own suitcase, not the vanity case, my suitcase, my 20 kg suitcase. Because whatever, whoever came to pick me up said, people do their own things here. So anyway, and straight from airport I go to Basildon in Essex. I arrived here 11th August 1982. So Basildon probably was very different. And hospital accommodation, from one window I could see A127. Now I know it's called A127. At that time I thought it's a big road and then the cars are just going. From the other side, the back of the hospital, from the other window I could see a construction. That's all I knew. I started making friends, slowly say hello. But every time I spoke, and hello Indian lady, and I say, yeah, I dance. I don't know why I had to say that I dance. So although I was pregnant, but some people knew that this person has just arrived, very fresh. She dances. So anyway, about 3 weeks before my son was born, I was in a Durga Puja event. And at that time, the music, getting music wasn't that easy. So everybody was looking at this little girl who wanted to dance. Orunadi's daughter, Tumpa, wanted to dance. Some auntie taught her a dance. Himero rate roi gaganere deep gulire. This is the song I remember. So she wanted to dance. Everybody said, does anybody have this music? Anybody? So nobody. And I was just listening to the phone conversation, and I was very polite, and I said, I can sing that song if you want me to. So I said, oh really, you can sing? Okay, yeah, we got a singer, and I sat on the stage and I sang that song, massive. In fact, I can keep my notes on my tummy because it was like just 2.5 weeks before my son was born. And there I met this wonderful friend, Dikha. She comes and she asked me, I hear that you dance actually. And I said, I do. Will you perform in a concert, Saraswati Puja concert, 18th February 83. It would have been like exactly 3 months after the baby was going to be born. And I didn't think for a second. I still wonder what made me think on that day, yes, I will. I don't know, I had no friends, I didn't know where is Basildon, where is Reading, how will I go, how will I be, who will be looking after the baby. I just said I will. She goes and tells her committee, we met this person and she's going to dance, she's pregnant and she's going to have baby in 2 weeks time. So everybody kind of laughed and said like, it's not going to happen, but it did happen. I did dance. Dikha helped me a lot at that time and encouraging a lot, and Dikha and Rupen, they were like very instrumental in the initial days because they were really classical music lovers and dance lovers. So I suddenly found somebody who understood. Then I started teaching in Basildon, opened the school. My school, I forgot to tell one thing. I started teaching when I was first teaching. I taught a local girl when I was like 13, 14. And then as soon as I finished my degree, I wanted to basically start teaching. So I was teaching from the age of 16, 17, and then like 2021 is like a serious school I had. It was called Nrityam. They even did the exams and all that. And so coming back to England, so when the Basildon class, what are we going to call it? So first Nrityam, because that was my school. It was still running in India, and but then we said no, it will be very difficult for people to say the name here, so let's call it Chandam. I don't think it's any easier, however, it was called Chandam. I think the school still kind of exists in Basildon, so that's how Chandam was set up, and I used to come and teach. And then the life took me to Cambridge. We were staying in Cambridge, and I used to take National Express coach with my 3-year-old, like he was like 2.5, 3, and come on the coach. I used to feel really sick on the coach, but I used to come and then come to Basildon, teach, and take coach back. Then we moved to Slough, and I taught at that time in Crawley as well. Keith Lansing set up a school. He used to come and pick me up from Crawley station. I really traveled far, different places to teach. So we moved to Slough. There I met Linda Jasper. She was the dance development officer in the South Hill Park Arts Center. She comes and meets me and come and do some workshop. So I did the workshop, and she says, work with my youth group, create a piece with them. This is in 85. So I was like super excited. What? I can do this here? So they were all contemporary dancers. So on their bodies, using Kathak and some of their movements, what sort of suited at that time what I thought, I created this piece. We called it Radha and Krishna. And the music, I used to listen. I had a little cassette player and like a notebook, and I used to, many of you probably don't even know what a cassette is, like a tape. And I used to listen to the cassette and of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, and then Ravi Shankarji's Ragmala, conducted by Zubin Mehta. And I used to say, oh, from here I can do a mix. And so I'll keep singing and change the cassette and just go there. It mixes. So then I took it to somebody and they at South Hill Park, and they did it. So we did that performance. Linda then wrote to Academy. At that time, Pushkala was the artistic director, and said, we have a dancer here who has just come and doing some work, and I think you should meet her. And Pushkala called, and I came and I met. And she, at that time, Academy was producing Return of Spring, and she said, do you want to come and watch? And I watched. I see all these dancers, Piali dance and Chanapati ji. So I like, what? People dance here? Not so many people, because before that I hadn't come across sort of classical dance or Indian dancers as such. I knew very much community, Bengali community, and then I did Linda's work. And I knew there must be more than these. But so first interaction, I saw the piece, Return of Spring. And then started generally working, Commonwealth Institute, I was one of their outreach speaker. We did, as Manisha Patel the other day, she said, we did a lot of touring, traveling festival of India, which was Anup organized, and Alistair Spalding, the famous Alistair Spalding of Sadler's Wells, he was our tour manager at one time. It was fun. We used to do funny things. However, so then I did a lot of education work, I actually love doing education work. Music for Change, an organization in Kent. I was one of their very first artists. Tom Andrews, he set up Music for Change, and he called and me and there was another African drummer, and we started doing outreach work in schools and so on. And to be honest, if I have survived as a dancer, it is honestly, initially it's just the volume of education work, what I did, traveling miles and miles, but I used to enjoy it also, whether it's a prison, whether it's footballers, whether it's an immigration law movement center, primary schools, secondary schools, day center, all sorts of setups I used to go to. And I used to at that time also start to bringing a lot of musicians, like, because I thought if I want to dance, I need musicians. So I don't know how I had that courage, and I said, okay, let's apply for work permit. And so they used to come and stay in my house. And so it was all fun, like the people are staying and we are creating. And so then there was a time I created a tour with the filigree, with the flamenco and Rakshaki dancers. We toured for 2-3 years. And then also so many different performances, solo tour. Then later, I really enjoyed making work which was quite issue based. Did something on, you know, the killing of female embryos, and then, or Together We Can, which is about global warming. Somehow I did enjoy making work on certain messages or issues and so on. And when I make the work, I I look at the scenario and like what it is, and I create the compositions like Kathak bowls for it, to fit it, rather than just fit a bowl, a composition for it. So it's quite a process. And then of course I can do that because the blessings I had from the greatest artists like Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, Birju Maharaj ji, my Guruji Vijay Shankar ji, I've seen them from very close, how they practice, how they create, how they think. I tried to understand that. Ravi Shankar ji, I remember, I'll tell you a story. Like one day, he was like nearly 90 at that time, and he goes like this. I said, what happened? He goes, this was in San Diego. He goes like, I'm punished. I said, what do you mean? He had an injection on his finger, and the doctor said you cannot play for 3 days. So he's saying he's on a punishment. That 3 days not playing. He cannot think of like any day not playing. And I'm like, my God, I go days without practicing. I should not be saying this, but that's the truth. Maharaj ji, how dedicated. When he was here, only a few years back, I kept 1 day free. He goes, kuch nahi hai? Like there is nothing today? I said, no, rest day. Kya rest day? All of you stand up, do something, some creative new tihai. And I said, okay, it's nice. Okay, now let's have fun. Okay. So I've seen these people, Vijay Shankar ji, whenever he spoke any rhythm, his eyes, small eyes, like lit up. I'll tell you one rhythm. Like I just remember his eyes. Like I recently taught my students, they don't know where it came from. In my garden, there are some mouse. It's driving me crazy. They're going. Dhada dhinna, 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 thunna, katta, dhin dhin, dagatata tunna katta, dagatata dhinna, na na na, dagatata dhinna, dhinna, thunna, katta, dhin dhin, dagatata tunna katta, dagatata dhinna, na na. Dhagatata dinna, dhinna, thunna, katta, din din, dhagatata tunna, katta, dhagatata dinna, na. Whenever I go in my studio, I'm always thinking this mouse is going to come. They're wandering around. I'll sort them out. When I decided that I need to leave the marriage, I attempted many times and I said, would I be able to? Again comes a story. I was working with 2 musicians. I'm not going to name them. They're very good musicians. They were working with me at that time. They were married. They had kids. Each had 1 kid. And I one day was very upset, walking up and down and saying, crying and saying, are they smarter than me? Are they cleverer than me? If they can support a family, being in a similar profession, why can I not support a family? Then I realized it's all in the head. They are men. From childhood, they are taught or they're told, when you grow up, you will be the provider. You are the man. So they start thinking, I'll be the provider. Hence they can. And I saw the light and I decided to move out. That was not the only reason that why I cannot provide for. It was 13 years of different stories. I had to come to that decision. Now, when I worked I must tell you this story, how my life, my teaching, my pedagogy, my thinking all changed. At one point, 1997, I went to Siladai for an appraisal as part of Kadam's, one of the artistic directors. And Sheila said, what is your passion? She pushed it. And I said, okay, my passion is nothing to do with dance. I think dancers don't train scientifically and don't cross-train enough and all these things. And she goes, I know it's nearly time, so I'm just getting it quicker. And she goes, this is a very hot subject in the world now. Write something. Animated is going out in 2 days. If you can write, I'll help you. So I wrote an article about my idea, my sports, because I used to do a lot of sports. There's so much to tell. I used to do a lot of sports. I used to play cricket and so on. So how it helped each other. Dance helped sports and sports helped my dance. So anyway, I was offered to do Yanis Kudedakis. He said, okay, do the research, I'll support you. He was in Wolverhampton. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I did a postgraduate in Brunel in sports science. The biomechanics, the physiology, the understanding the body anatomy, understanding the structure, just changed my life completely. I'm like, I used to be obsessed. I'm still obsessed. I can look at a man or woman and thinking, that posture, they're going to have knee problem. I have to tell you this story. I used to take my son and his friend to watch football. So we go to see Liverpool playing football in Hotspur, in Tottenham, and then I used to go always before to watch their warm up. So as to see how the striker is warming up and how the defender is warming up and how the goalkeeper is warming, David James. He was doing a warm-up, he was diving to this side and coming to the center, diving because that was the warm-up, because the shooting could be anywhere. Every time he was coming, he was in the center, beautifully balanced leg, in not too low, not too high, so that he could spring up on either side. And I was so excited to see this perfection. I go screaming, look at his legs. A middle-aged person shouting out, sitting in a football gallery, Indian, I never am without my bindi. My son and his friend went inside the t-shirt. I don't think he went anywhere after me, with me after that, except when I drove to France to see the World Cup football. Lots of stories. In recent years, I must say the influence or the benefit or the learning I had being the chair of the ISTV. Going to different exams, seeing how different ballet teachers or modern teachers, how they are thinking, how they are structuring, how they are marking, how they are developing the courses. I just feel I benefited so much by being in those meetings and in understanding the whole teaching side of it. And I love my teaching. I'm quite a not strict teacher, but very strange teacher, I think. My students are better than me. They are fabulous. They do good work, and they also, as crazy as me, like I'll come up with the ideas and they will say, okay, let's go for it. Like, I don't know whether you saw the promo a little while ago. I told Salome this morning, I have some crazy ideas. Will you do it? She said, yes. If I say any crazy ideas, so Vidya and Jenna will be jumping up. She's a good girl. She will jump up and she will say, yes, go for it. Mithan, all of them, they're like ready for, So I think learning dance is one thing, but always curious and excited about various ideas. It's very, very important to keep it all alive. And I must end my story, The Munch Baby. I have a lot of stories to tell, but tomorrow must listen to the stories of my very dear friend Gauri Sharma Tripathi. She's going to come with fabulous stories, fabulous dancing. All my listeners, please tune in tomorrow. Thank you very much, and God bless. Stay safe.